Treat me this weekend.
Lovely. It took me, a little bit to get here. I should have been here on Friday, but I should have been here on Thursday, but my plane got delayed, so couldn't get here till Friday. But traveling is crazy right now.
Oh yeah.
It's hit or miss. But here I am, made it.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get into your Star Trek stuff, I promise. We will get into Star Trek. But I kind of wanted to start with, in my research, you did music videos in the 80s. You did some really awesome ones with Black Sabbath and Chris Isaac. And so how did that go about, like, when your early days?
Well, the very first one I did was with Mary Lambert directing, who would go on to direct Pet Sematary. But so music videos were just getting going. MTV had just begun, and they needed content. And so a lot of Mary had come out of art school, and she was looking to get her directing chops, and music videos were a great way to start. So all kinds of young early directors were getting their starts, and she, because she had gone to the Rhode Island School of Design with the Talking Heads, and she was friends with Tina Weymouth and Chris France. They formed a little offshoot band called the Tom Tom Club. And so we did that music video.
So fun.
Yeah.
So fun. And then what did that lead into? So you do the music videos.
So music videos, and at that point in my career, and I did the Tom Tom Club video with Judd Nelson, an actor, who was also just getting going. Of course, he broke in The Breakfast Club really big. But we were all just young actors looking for work, any kind of work we could get. We were studying, and eventually, we started to work in the business.
That's exciting. So how did the audition process come about for Tasha Yar? And what were those early Star Trek days like? Was there a lot of buzz? Because it'd been 20 years.
I think it was 25 years.
Okay.
Let's see. So I was working on a movie called Miracle Mile, and I got the audition for Star Trek: The Next Generation, but I originally auditioned for the role of Troy, Counselor Troy. So, the process was long. It was, I think I probably went into audition 5 times before I got the part of Tasha Yar. Somewhere in there, Gene Roddenberry switched Marina and I, and then that's how he cast us.
Awesome. Well, what were you told about her, and what did you want to shape and bring to her? What were those talks like?
Gene was very generous in his allowing us to have free hand with what we saw this developing, who these characters were. He would say, that they belong to you now, and so you're free to take it the way you see fit. So it was the first year you're always sort of figuring things out, and who is this in relation to the other characters, in relation to this profession. It's so much of your imagination because you don't have a lot to model it on. This is also sci-fi, but it was a process. We were given a lot of free rein.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. So who did you make some decent friendships at first? Like, who were the people you would hang out with, like, behind the scenes?
I mean, we all were supportive of each other. We were all a very tight group. We sort of felt that we didn't have a lot of support outside of each other. I mean, the crew certainly, and but I mean, the show hadn't aired yet, we weren't sure, to be honest, I wasn't sure the show would go past the first season.
Wow.
It was a lot of struggle behind the scenes, a lot of disruptive writing issues. They couldn't hold a writing team together. There were a lot of behind the scenes troubles that we weren't even privy to. We were just trying to hang on and do the best we could with what we had. And, you know, we always felt like we were sort of the redheaded stepchild, you know, of the studio, and kind of were left to, you know, our own devices. But we did the best we could with what we had.
That is awesome. So pulling out this book here, Women of Star Trek. This was written by a visitor,
Yes.
and I read your section. And when they bring up Tasha, they kind of brought up Aliens, the movie Aliens, and they wanted to take that female Marine kind of lead character and kind of develop kind of this badass female that also promoted her sexuality, so to speak. Is that what you were kind of told about her?
That promoted her sexuality and
A little bit of both, like a balance. They wanted her to still be
tough, but be sexy.
Yes.
Sexy tough. Oh, huh. I didn't know that. I mean, that's what it felt like. You know, the most compelling, interesting thing to me about Tasha Yar, which unfortunately they didn't run with and didn't develop, was her background. Right. And the fact that she was this survivor and this damaged in struggling with what she was able to accomplish, but inside of her still very fragile. It was a really complicated, complex dynamic, and they had so much to work with, and they didn't go there.
Yeah, I'd agree, because they would do small snippets
Yeah.
of her past, really small. But then early on, they made her a little hot-headed. They also did the Naked Now episode, like the second one in.
Right. And then, of course, there's that infamous Code of Honor episode, which is, you know, what are you thinking? I mean, seriously, and you wonder why I left at the end of the first season. I'm thinking, well, what are you guys thinking? What are you doing? I mean, I kept looking around my shoulder when we were doing Code of Honor, thinking, does anyone know what this is about? I mean, this is really uncomfortable. You know, nobody chimed in, and nobody, you know, we felt powerless.
Wow. So she was killed off toward the end of the first season, and I remember seeing that scene, and I'm like, so unceremonious, so almost like, you know, a red shirt death. Like, how did that feel to, like, okay, well, that's it.
Well, I mean, the intention was that, you know, she would die, that it would be such a random, shocking death and unprovoked. And that was the intention. I think it didn't really land that way. You know, it just was kind of, well, this is one of first of all, your chief of security. She should go out in a battle or something, you know, protecting somebody, protecting the ship. But fortunately, you know, I got to do yesterday's Enterprise, which kind of redeemed that whole thing.
Yes, and how did that happen? Like, did somebody say, yeah, that just wasn't right, and we need to do right by Denise and by Tasha?
I don't think it was that, you know, specific in that way. I think a guy who was I think he was working for Gene, or might have been an assistant in some way, named Eric Stillwell. He came up with a story, and that's when they were accepting open submissions. If you wrote a Star Trek story, you could submit it. Now, you know, and that's generally not the case. You can't just get a script to the producers. It has to go through an agent and proper channels. But they had an open submission policy, and Eric Stillwell had this idea, submitted it, and they went with it. And that was how Yesterday's Enterprise came about. And they called me 2 years after I'd left the show. Rick Berman, the producer, called me at home and said, there's a script in which Tasha is alive, and I went, what? And he said, please read it. I think it's really good. And I said, oh, well, yeah, sure. And I read it, and it was incredible. I thought this was the best script I'd read. Yeah.
That had to feel so good.
Yeah, and a total surprise.
It's amazing. So then you go and film that episode, and then you get to come back later again as your own daughter. Yep. Interesting, right? That was, all of that came about because of Yesterday's Enterprise. So what was it? What did you want to bring to the Romulan portion of you versus your human side? What did you tap into? Well, I mean, I think that I loved the idea of Sela being raised completely as a Romulan and not identifying in any way as a human. That was just completely negated by her upbringing. And my intention was that she would have a breakthrough and come to embrace her human side. She would get to know her mother and get to identify with her mother and be appreciative of her mother eventually. But that would be a long arc to get there. But again, they didn't run with that storyline. Right, being later in the seasons, or the later seasons too. But it would have been cool to see it more developed and see what that would have meant to the series. But that's how that tends to go. So you worked on Pet Sematary pretty much immediately after Star Trek, or was that also kind of in the process? No, I think it was pretty quickly after I left, maybe within a year. Yeah. So what was it like working with little baby Gage? Like those scenes where he's like coming at you? That was incredible. Making the film was great. We were in Maine, and we were beautiful place, and where the story is set. It added so much more than making a movie on a movie set in Hollywood. We were there on location, so it gives you a lot of texture and feeling, and you begin to embody these characters. And Stephen King wrote the screenplay, and he was there for 2 weeks with us before we ever shot anything, just working out the script. And you guys, it's hot in here, isn't it? Is it me? Yeah, it's hot. So anyway, we worked on the script, and he was great. He just answered all kinds of questions and we might have, and Gage. So Miko Hughes, usually when you work with children, you work with twins because of the technical difficulty it is working with children. You're confined to only a certain amount of time, very little time. So you flip out, you exchange one for the other and keep shooting. It makes your life much easier. But Mary Lambert, who directed the movie, just loved Miko when she met him. So she was willing to sacrifice that, make it much more difficult for her, but she really wanted him to play the role. And she did it very carefully in that she filmed the movie in sequence, like started in the beginning when everything was good and positive and happy and this family was intact, and slowly moved to the darker parts. So by the time we got to the darker parts of the film, Miko, being only 3 years old, just thought this was the coolest, most fun thing to do, to be on this movie set, and loved all of us, and it was like playtime for him. So he was willing, to take a scalpel, a fake scalpel in his hand, and wear a little Victorian funeral suit, and he was game. He was game on. So, and that was very clever of Mary Lambert to do that.
very clever. Because, you know, people often wonder, as did I, how are you going to, you know, you don't want to hurt anyone, you know, the psyche of a child, you know, how do you do this? And you've got to be, and that's my priority. That has to be the priority on this set. And so we all were on the same page with that, and really made Nico feel very safe and you know, careful with him.
Awesome.
And he's great. He's now, you know, there was like a gap of time I didn't see Nico, you know, from like when he was 3 until he was about, you know, 22. And so when I saw him as a young man, you know, my first reaction was, oh my God, you're not crazy, you know, you made it. And we always laugh about that, and yeah, he's great.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to start taking some questions if you want to start coming up here. While we do that, I wanted to talk to you about Trekkies. I sat down and watched it. I didn't know how I would feel about it, knowing fans like I do, but it painted such a beautiful picture of community and acceptance, and I was like, wow, I love that you did that. How did that come about? Where was the idea from?
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. So back in the, you know, 87, when the show was first on, I was being invited to cons. I'd never been to one. And I was absolutely fascinated by the friendship and the charity work, the connection people were making, the joy of getting together and sharing and talking about their common ground, their favorite show, their, you know, what stuff they're into. So it was so much more than was being depicted by the media. Now this is back in 87. You gotta understand, cons were not like they are now. They aren't as, you know, there's one in every city now. There's multiple in every city now. And it's like, it's cool to be out. You know, back in 87, it was still like, you know, people were a little shy about it all, you know, because they were so misread. Like, I turn on the 11 o'clock news, and the local anchor would say, oh, hey, everyone, a Star Trek convention's coming to town. Get those pointy ears on and come on down to the, you know, and it was like, really? Well, it's so much more going on. So, and I also knew that Star Trek is nothing without the fans. The fans are what put that show on TV. They kept it going when it was canceled every year back in the 60s, and it is the most symbiotic relationship I've ever seen with a TV show. So I wanted to give the fans a voice. Let's see what it is that brings you here. What do you like about it? What moves you? And let's take a dive into that. So Roger Nygaard, the director, and I, had never made a documentary before, had zero budget. We basically started to go to cons that I had been invited to as a guest. And with the permission of the promoter, with a camera and a mic, and two guys, one had his camera, one had a sound system, agreeing to follow us around for free, we began to assemble this documentary. And that's how it happened.
Love it. All right, let's take our first question.
Well, I love Trekkies and Trekkies 2, the follow-up, so
thank you
for that.
So much.
My name is Scott. I have the honor of being a co-host on the Star Trek podcast, Trekcast. Sorry, ladies, I'm already taken. Well, first I just want to say on behalf of everybody at Trekcast, and I'm sure I speak for everybody in this room, thank you so much for coming to the Grand Rapids Comic Con.
Thank you, honey. Thank you so much.
So on our Facebook group, I said that I was going to come up here and ask you a question, and we got suggestions for all kinds of questions to ask.
Cool.
And I'm going to ignore every single one of them. And I really want to know, and I've asked this to a few other Star Trek actors, and I'm curious what your answer is, because I'm here to ask the big, hard-hitting questions. Did you ever get invited to anybody's house on the cast and crew for dinner? And if so, who was the best cook?
Wow. Wow. The only person who, well, you're talking about my cast.
Anybody from Star Trek.
Oh, okay. For sure, Nana Visitor. For sure. She is a gourmet cook and a gracious host. She and her husband Matthew, I mean, they had like a bakery, if I'm not mistaken, in Santa Fe or something, and you know, she can whip up a fine meal. Oh yeah.
Wonderful.
Definitely.
Next question.
I've heard that Terry Farrell, when they killed off Jadzia Dax, she was very surprised when that they chose to go that route when she left to leave the show. Were you the same way with Tasha Yar? Were you surprised that they decided to kill the character off?
Was I surprised when they were going to kill her?
Yes.
I knew that I was going. I mean, I sat across from Gene Roddenberry in our final kind of meeting about things, and he right then and there said, I'm gonna kill the character. It's never been done, I've never done it, and I think it'll be shocking. He said that what makes me sad about that, though, is that, you won't be able to come back. Which, you know what happened there. He didn't live to see that, though.
So in his idea,
Yeah,
we're not going to come back.
right, if you're dead, you're dead. And that's pretty much what I thought. So, now I say anything's possible. If I saw that happen, anything's possible.
Absolutely.
I want to start by saying I really enjoyed every performance you did. My question isn't about Star Trek, though.
Come a little closer to the mic, yeah, so I can hear you.
Sorry.
No, that's right.
My question is not about Star Trek, though. I'm sorry about that.
Nothing wrong with that.
But aside from Pet Sematary, most of your career has been either Star Trek or family movies. So my question is about the movie Mortuary.
Yeah.
What led you to that, and what was your favorite part about doing it?
Wow. Well, I mean, I thought it was, first of all, Toby Hooper, I think, is the reason I did it. I wanted to work with him. He was a legend. And, it came out of the blue. I was offered the role. And I just thought it was just a crazy script. I mean, I loved the idea of this, recently divorced woman dragging her two kids, and buying a mortuary. What a wacky thing to do, and become a mortician. And it just was so off the charts. And, it was really a fun, crazy movie to do.
Thank you. I
Absolutely.
absolutely loved it.
Thank you, honey.
Hello.
This is a little bit follow-up on your character as Romulan. When you were approached about that character, did you have like a little animosity about, I'm gonna get even, you killed me before, so now I'm gonna kill you? Or, I lost my train of thought. But like your feelings on how you're going to address that character and your thoughts behind the development of that.
Well, I had, I loved the idea that she was this, this leader of this faction, and was really against the Federation. And she did want to, take over and annihilate them. And but in the course of that, she discovers this side of her that she was in denial of, which is this human side of her. And again, you know, I thought that it would have been such a great idea to be able to understand who her mother was. You know, you can imagine that she wasn't given any, well, the story that she would have been given would have been quite negative about her mother, that she would have been an enemy. And so, a traitor, an enemy, you know, all of those things. So what she realizes is, you know, how the story is not that, and what she does with that information. And actually, I thought Sela would end up being a bridge to peace with the Romulans.
That would have been cool.
Right? That's such a positive, good. Yeah, exactly. But would have, hell would have happened before that occurs. You know, real hell.
Absolutely. Hi there.
First, let me say thank you for being part of the long and proud tradition of strong, tough women in science fiction. You know, Princess Leia, Tasha Yar,
Heck yeah.
you know, just a bunch of great, strong women.
Thank you.
My question is, speaking of strong women, I gather that you were originally cast as Deanna Troy, and Marina Sirtis was going to be Tasha Yar, and then you were flipped. So how did you go from going into a role where someone's not only in their feelings but in everybody else's feelings to the character that's kicking ass and taking names?
Two parts of one person. The audition process I only spent about 2 auditions as with Deanna Troy, and the first one being really kind of in the dark. We were given no scripts. We were given only what's called our sides, which is what you have to audition with. So I had absolutely no clue what a beta Z, is or was, or, and I think the original idea for Troy was she was sort of this like Scandinavian icy blonde, very cool and collected and calm, and just could read things very subtly and very quietly, but very icy. And I mean, that was what I was going with. I think because of my short hair, when Jean saw me, just went, wow, that could be a great look for, a badass on the bridge. And he just flipped us there. Yeah, so that part wasn't hard to make that adjustment. I grew up, being a tomboy and playing with the rough and tumble boys and very athletic, and so I just channeled, that in. And I grew up in Hollywood, which to me was always a failed Earth colony, so that was easy.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
That is an excellent segue. Let's talk about that short hair and how that came about.
Oh, I love this story. We were talking about this the other day. So, being the rebel spirit that I am, a little calmer now, but certainly a feisty young girl, I was offered to do a pictorial in Playboy. And I think this guy came in. I was working in a kind of a jewelry shop. I was cutting gemstones, actually, figuring out what I wanted to do. I was studying music. I didn't know, I wasn't acting. And I was very young. I think I was about 20. And this guy came in, this photographer, this Polish photographer, and he said, I do some shoots for Playboy. Would you want to do a pictorial? And I went, I don't know about that. I don't want to be naked. He said, no, you're not naked. You're just a little naked, but you're not fully naked. And it's, you get a lot of money. you make a lot of money. I think it was like $30,000, which back then was a lot of money, okay? And so I was living with my parents at home, and I said to my mom, thinking she's gonna really not go for this. My mom was like, do it! Great! Oh my God, you'll be famous, And I went, okay, great. My mom, great advice from her mother. Do Playboy, yeah. So anyway, the angle being that I was the granddaughter of Bing Crosby, Mr. Uptight, perfect singer, family man, Mr. Christmas. It would be just, rebellious. So I thought, okay. So this guy, Eugene, this photographer, and I go out, and we're on location at some, beautiful estate with, they have llamas running around, and he's got this funny little outfit for me. Not sexy at all. I mean, it's like I'm corseted with a frilly, skirt and tights and little boots and, puffy sleeves, but nothing on top. And I look like Little Bo Peep, like a topless Little Bo Peep. And, I have long hair, my hair's long and curly and, fluffy. It's 1980 or something. And I'm dying. And so I'm going, this is not who I am. I can't identify with this. I don't want to look, I'm so miserable. So the shoot ends, and we have 2 days before we're to resume some more photos. In the day off, I walk into Beverly Hills, and I walk into Vidal Sassoon's hair salon, and without an appointment, and I don't know anyone, and I said, I want you to cut all my hair off. And I remember the person goes, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. And they go, well, I think, Jan will be the right girl for you. So I sit down, and she just almost buzz cuts me and just chops all my hair off. And the next day, I go to the photo shoot without saying anything. And Eugene takes one look at me and goes, what did you do? Oh my God. Oh, well, forget it. We can't do this. We can't do it. It's off. It's off. Come on, you've got to come with me. We've got to go to the photo editor's office. So this big Playboy tower on the Sunset Strip. And we go up to the top floor, and Marilyn Grabowski, who's the photo editor of Playboy, we go into her office, and she goes, oh my God, well, this is a disaster. We can't, Hefner is never going to approve of this. You don't look, you've ruined it. We have to cancel the shoot. By chance, standing next to her was a guy named Philip Dixon, who was their star photographer. And he was transitioning from doing Playboy into now doing Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. He had just gone to Paris, where his girlfriend, who had been a Playboy model, was now doing runway shows and fashion shoots in Paris. He had just come from Paris. So he took a look, he goes, wait a minute. I don't know. I like the way she looks. And Marilyn goes, Philip, but Hef's not going to go. And he said, well, wait a minute. Let's do some test shots. Let me do some test shots with her. And if he likes it, we'll do a photo shoot. And that's what happened. So we do these test shots, and they published the test shots. We never even, ended up doing a, photo shoot. We just did this kind of punky, edgy shots that ended up in Playboy. And oddly enough, it's because of Playboy that brought me into acting. Because I went to model after that. The magazine came out and I was in Europe. And I came home after spending a couple months in Europe, and I get a call at my parents' house from a casting director named Tony Howard, who at that time was one of the biggest casting directors in Hollywood. She had called Playboy, and they had, Playboy, back then, people were looking at Playboy and going, oh, I'd like her for a movie, or she looks good. And Playboy, they had a reciprocal relationship with casting people. They gave Tony Howard my home number. Can you imagine? This would never happen today. So I get the call in my parents' house, and she's a casting director. I didn't even know what a casting director was. And she said, I'm doing a movie of the week. It's called The Diary of a Teenage Hitchhiker. Would you come in and read for it? I said, yeah, sure. So I meet her in her office. She hands me the script. She goes, go home, read the script. I'd never read a script in my life. And come back, and when you're ready in a day or so, you read for me, which I did. The thing is that they cast Charlene Tilton. Do you guys remember Charlene Tilton? She was on Dallas, I think, right? She's about 5'3", and I'm 5'8". And they said, we can't it was like for one of her friends, she was the lead. We're not casting anyone over, 5'5". But if you want to do this, I'm gonna write 3 names of acting coaches, acting teachers, and go to either one of them. They're all good, see which one you like, and start studying, and I'll help you get an agent. And that's how it began.
So that short hair opened doors.
Yeah. Well, what we were talking about, my boldness to, that was like the first indication that I had that kind of spunk where it was like, no, we're gonna do it on my terms. And that's kind of what happened. And that there would be other instances of that along the way.
Awesome. Well, speaking of returns, Paramount's just going full bore into Star Trek right now. Strange New Worlds is awesome. Lower Decks, so much they're doing right now. I feel like we could fit that back in. I feel like she could come back.
Sela, yeah, I hope so. I would love to do it. I think she's unfinished. I think she's a great character. I've talked to Terry Metalis about it, and if he could ever get his legacy show off the ground, I don't know. Paramount's in a kind of flux right now. They've been sold, and we'll see what the heck happens to it. I don't know. Nobody knows. A lot of people lost their jobs at Paramount right now. I think they let 2,000 people go. So that's a really big restructuring of that studio. And, a couple of years ago, it just was like the wild, wild west. These streaming companies came in and they just spent a lot of money and gave a lot of people shows to do. And then the strikes happened, and the, COVID happened, but there wasn't a return. They didn't do as well as they thought they would. So they're in a kind of it's a weird time. They're readjusting, they're rethinking, the slogan in Hollywood right now is stay alive till 25. So that's kind of, you ride these different waves. I've been in this business long enough to see all kinds of things come and go, and ups and downs. So you just kind of, you gotta ride it out, see where it lands.
Absolutely. And just to wrap up a little bit, what are you excited about that you're working on right now?
Well, what's going on right now? I'm trying to write this book. It's not a memoir. It's really about when I was 3. My father brought a paternity case, and my mother went to court, and it was this scandal. It was it was like a tabloid, hurricane. We used to have to climb out the back window to get to court because the paparazzi were, surrounding my mother's apartment, and it was pretty scandalous, but she won the case. My father, at that point, well, it was really his lawyers that wanted to prove that I was actually his daughter. And this was before DNA testing and everything. So it was a big jury trial, headline news. I've got all the newspaper clippings. My mother saved everything. So this year I've been slowly going through all the clippings, putting them in, acid-free boxes. I went to the downtown LA court archives and I got the transcripts of the case, which was like finding a needle in a haystack. The fact that this gentleman working there was determined to find this case, because basically all I had was a date and a year, the year and date and place. I had the lawyers' names and I had the defendant and plaintiff's names, but they couldn't find it that way. But they were able to do this, and so, I have the case. So I'm slowly writing pieces about what happened, because the trial was not to be believed. There were people paid to come up on the witness stand and tell total lies and fabrications, to try to paint my mother out as, this Jezebel, and they didn't win, and my mother won, and so it's just the timing is good, for this kind of, I want to alternate chapters with the trial and my perspective and my kind of renderings of it and thoughts about it and about, this. So
That's fascinating.
I'm slowly, well, these last few weeks I haven't been writing at all. I've been just on the road with these cons, but that's going on. And then I'm looking at scripts, read a couple scripts, so we'll see about some work, and it's slowly coming back. The strikes were we had to stop everything, so now it's kind of coming back.
Well, that's wonderful. We look forward to seeing everything you're going to be doing in the future.
Thank
And
you,
everybody,
honey.
just round of applause for.
Oh, you guys have been great. Thank you all so much, really.